Hi, this is Elizabeth Root, and this is my podcast, Dark Mystery Daisy of Death. And this is going to be my first episode, and it's about the Memphis 3. The Memphis 3 case involves the 1993 murders of three young boys, Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers in Memphis, Arkansas. The case garnered widespread attention due to the controversial convictions of three teenagers, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly, Jr. The boys were found dead in a wooded area, and the crime was described as brutal, with evidence suggesting they were tied up and mutilated. The prosecution's case stressed heavily on Jesse Miss Kelly, Jr.'s confession, which he later recanted, claiming it was coerced, and despite a lack of physical evidence directly tying the three teenagers to the crime scene. They were convicted in 1994. Echols was sentenced to death, while Baldwin and Miss Kelly received life sentences. The case drew public attention, with many believing the three were wrongly convicted based on local hysteria about satanic rituals. Since Echols had expressed an interest in occultism, over the years new evidence emerged, including DNA testing that didn't match any of the three men, raising doubts about their guilt. In 2011, after years of appeal and public support from celebrities, the three men entered Alfred pleas, allowing them to maintain their innocence, while acknowledging that prosecutors had enough evidence to convict them. They were released after spending 18 years in prison. The case remains controversial, with the true perpetrators still unknown. Some of the alternate suspects has been proposed, but no one else has been charged in connection with the murders. The Memphis 3 continue to maintain their innocence and work towards fully exonerating their names. Damien Echols, born Michael Wayne Hutchinson on December 11th, 1994, in West Memphis, Arkansas, had a troubled upbringing marked by poverty, frequent relocations, and a challenging family dynamic. He later adopted the name Damien, reportedly after Father Damien, a Catholic saint who worked with lepers, which he found inspiring. Echols grew up in a working-class family in Arkansas, living in trailer parks and experiencing financial instability. His parents divorced when he was young, adding to the instability in his life. He struggled in school and was often bullied for being different. Echols developed an interest in art, poetry, and alternative religions, which made him stand out in his conservative community. Damien exhibited signs of depression and anxiety from a young age. He sought solace in writing and reading, exploring spirituality, which included studying Wicca and other occult practices. He later described these interests as misunderstood during his trial. Before his arrest in 1993, Echols had a minor run-ins with the law, including shoplifting, truancy. He also went under psychiatric treatment and was briefly institutionalized, with records suggesting he had suicidal tendencies and anger issues. Echols was considered a goth in his community, wearing black clothing, listening to heavy metal music, and expressing interest in the occult. These interests made him a target for the suspicion in the conservative Bible Belt town of Memphis, particularly after the murders of three young boys in 1993. Jason Baldwin, born April 11th, 1977, in West Memphis, Arkansas, grew up in a working-class family in the same neighborhood as Damien Echols and Jesse Miss Kelly, Jr. Baldwin's background was marked by the modest circumstances and a reputation of being a kind and artistic teenager who largely stayed out of trouble. Jason was raised by a single mother who worked hard to provide for him and his siblings. The family lived in poverty, often residing in trailer parks or small homes in West Memphis. Friends and family described Jason as gentle, quiet, and unconfrontational. He was passionate about art, excelling at drawing and expressing a desire to pursue a career in graphic design. Jason was a good student and he had aspirations to attend college, which made him stand out in his community. However, his close friendship with Damien, shared interest in alternative music and culture, drew unwanted attention in their conservative town. Jason enjoyed heavy metal music, skateboarding, and art. Unlike Damien Eccles, Walden didn't have a known interest in the cult or spirituality. He was seen as a loyal friend and often stayed in the background of social situations. Jesse Miskelly Jr., born on July 10, 1975, in Memphis, Arkansas, had a background marked by poverty, limited education, and intellectual challenges. His upbringing and cognitive limitations may have played a significant role in his involvement in the case of the Memphis 3 and his controversial confession. Jesse grew up in a low-income family in West Memphis. His father, Jesse Sr., worked various jobs and the family struggled financially, living in a rural part of the town. Jesse had significant learning disabilities and was diagnosed with an IQ in the range of 72, including inducting borderline intellectual functioning. He dropped out of school in the 9th grade and was known to have difficulty understanding complex situations or concepts. Despite his cognitive challenges, Jesse described as kind-hearted and eager to please. He was known to be easily influenced by authority figures and peers, which later played a critical role in his confession to law enforcement. Jesse was not heavily involved in the same alternative music or subculture interests as Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin. Instead, he was described as more of a mainstream in his activities, enjoying wrestling and spending time with his friends in his neighborhood. He wasn't close friends with Damien or Jason, but he knew them casually from the small town community. Michael Moore was one of the 3 victims in the Memphis 3 case, was an 8-year-old boy born on July 27th, 1984, in Memphis, Arkansas. He was described as a bright, energetic child who was well loved by his family, friends, and teachers. His tragic death on May 5th, 1993, alongside his friends Stevie Branch and Christopher Byers, shocked the local community and later gained national and international attention. Michael was the son of Dana and Todd Moore. He also had a sister, Dawn. His family was close-knit and deeply affected by his loss. Michael was a second grader at Weaver Elementary School. He was known for his strong academic performance, good behavior, and leadership qualities. His teachers, peers had admired honesty and kindness. Michael was described as brave, adventurous child with love for the outdoors. He enjoyed riding his bike and playing sports and spending time with his friends. He was often described as considered a leader among his friends. Michael was particularly interested in the Cub Scouts, which he was deeply involved in at the time of his death. He took great pride in wearing his uniform and participating in the scouting activities, owning badges and learning new skills. On May 5th, 1993, Michael and his friends Stevie Branch and Christopher Byers went out to play after school. The boys were last seen together in the neighborhood before disappearing. Their bodies were found the following day in a wooded area known as Robin Hood Hills. Michael's death, along with the deaths of his friends, has left an indelible mark on the Memphis community. His family continues to honor his memory and has expressed ongoing grief and frustration over the handling of the case and the significant legal battles. Stevie Branch was one of the 3 young victims in the Memphis 3 case. Was born on November 26, 1984, in Memphis, Arkansas. At the time of his tragic death on May 5th, 1993, Stevie was 8 years old and known for his vibrant personality and love for life. Stevie was the son of Pamela Hicks, known formerly Pamela Branch, and Stephen Branch Sr. His parents divorced when he was young, and Pamela later married Terry Hobbs, who became Stevie's stepfather. Stevie lived with his mother and stepfather in West Memphis. He also had a half-sister, Amanda Hobbs. His family was a working-class household typical of the area. Stevie attended Weaver Elementary School, where he was in the second grade. Teachers and classmates described him as friendly, outgoing, well-liked kid. He was known for his playful nature and infectious smile. Stevie was full of energy and curiosity. He loved playing outdoors, riding his bike, and spending time with his friends, particularly Michael Moore and Christopher Byers, with whom he shared a close bond. Stevie enjoyed activities like exploring his neighborhood, playing video games, participating in typical childhood pastimes. He was also known for his interest in music and his upbeat demeanor, which made him a favorite among his peers. On May 5th, 1993, Stevie went out to play with Michael Moore and Christopher Byers after school. The three boys were last seen together riding bikes in the Memphis neighborhood. Their bodies were discovered the following day in the Robin Hood Hill woods. Stevie's death affected his family and West Memphis community. His mother, Pamela Hicks, had remained vocal about her grief and frustration with the case, particularly in the light of controversy surrounding the investigation and the conviction of the West Memphis Three. Christopher Byers was one of the three young victims of the West Memphis Three case. Was born on June 23, 1984 in West Memphis, Arkansas. At just 8 years old, Christopher was a spirited and lovely child who brought joy to his family and friends. His untimely death on May 5, 1993, along with his friends Stevie Branch and Michael Moore, devastated the community and became the part of one of the most controversial criminal cases in American history. Christopher was the son of Melissa DeFar and Ricky Murray. After his parents divorced, his mother remarried John Mark Byers, who became Christopher's stepfather and legally adopted him. Christopher lived with his mother and stepfather and his older stepbrother Ryan Clark. His family was deeply affected by his tragic death, and his stepfather, John Mark Byers, became a prominent figure in the case. Christopher attended Weaver Elementary School and was in the second grade at the time of his death. Teachers described him as an energetic, curious student who sometimes struggled to stay focused, but had a big heart. Christopher was known to be playful, mischievous, and full of life. He had a reputation for being a bit of a class clown, but was well loved by his friends and family. He was protective of his loved ones and had a caring, affectionate nature. Christopher enjoyed outdoors activities, including riding his bike, exploring, and playing in the roads near his home. He had a love for animals and often caught home stray animals. His adventurous spirit made him a natural leader among his peers. On May 5, 1993, Christopher joined his friends Stevie Branch and Michael Moore for an afternoon of bike riding and playing in their neighborhood. The boys were last seen heading towards Robin Hood Hills area, a wooded section of West Memphis. Tragically, their bodies were discovered the following day, sparking an investigation that would lead to one of the most controversial trials in U.S. history. Christopher's death, along with those of his friends, left a lasting impact on his family and the broader community. His stepfather, John Mark Byers, became a central figure in the public discourse surrounding the case, in addition to supporting the convictions of the West Memphis Three, before later advocating for their innocence. Terry Hobbs was born on September 21st, 1958, in northern Arkansas. Was the stepfather of Stevie Branch, one of the three boys tragically killed in the West Memphis Three case. Over time, Terry Hobbs became a figure of interest in discussions surrounding the case due to emerging evidence and statements made years after the original investigation. Terry grew up in rural Arkansas, in a working-class family, little publicly known about his early life, but he had a background typical of the area, marked modest means and traditional values. As an adult, Terry worked various jobs to support his family, including as an ice cream truck driver and in manual labor. He married Pamela Hicks, formerly Branch, in the late 1980s, becoming the stepfather to her son, Stevie Branch. Terry was Stevie's stepfather, lived with Stevie's mother, Pamela, and his biological daughter, Amanda Hobbs. According to some accounts, Terry's relationship with Stevie was strained with claims that Terry could be controlling, had a temper. However, these assertions have been disputed by family members over the years. Terry and Pamela had a troubled marriage marked by allegations of domestic violence. The couple divorced several years after Stevie's death, with Pamela later alleging abuse behavior by Terry. Terry was not considered a suspect during the original 1993 investigation. The focus was primarily on Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Kelly Jr. Terry's alibi in the evening of the murders was not extensively scrutinized at the time. In 2007, new evidence emerged implicating Terry Hobbs. DNA was found on the literature used to tie one of the victims linked to him, although it was not conclusive. Additionally, inconsistencies in his statements about the timeline and witness accounts of his whereabouts on the night of the murders raised suspicions. Some individuals, including family members, neighbors, later came forward with allegations that implicated Terry, including claims of violent behavior and statements made by Terry about the murders. However, the testimonies were largely circumstantial. Terry Hobbs has consistently denied any involvement in the murders and has maintained his innocence. He has faced significant public scrutiny due to the DNA finding and allegations brought forward in the years after the convictions of the Memphis Three. In 2009, Terry Hobbs filed a defamation lawsuit against singer Natalie Maines of the Chicks after she publicly suggests that he was involved in the murders. The lawsuit was dismissed, but he further fueled public interest in his potential role in the case. Terry has largely stayed out of the public eye in recent years, but continues to be a controversial figure in the discussions about the Memphis 3 case. The Memphis 3 case refers to the tragic murders of 3 8-year-old boys, Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, Christopher Byers in West Memphis, Arkansas, on May 5, 1993. The crime was characterized by its brutality, and the sensational trial that followed remains one of the most controversial cases in American history. The victims were the best friends, attended Weaver Elementary School, and were last seen playing together in their neighborhood on the afternoon of May 5, 1993. They were reported missing later that evening. Known for his outgoing and cheerful personality, a responsible and adventurous child, described as a leader among his friends, Christopher Byers, energetic and mischievous with a caring Stevie Branch, known for his outgoing and cheerful personality. Michael Moore, a responsible and adventurous child, described as a leader among his friends. Christopher Byers, energetic and mischievous with a caring heart. The 3 boys, Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, were reported missing on May 5th, 1993 in West Memphis, Arkansas. Here's a timeline of events surrounding the disappearance. Timeline of missing persons report: afternoon, May 5th, 1993. The boys were last seen around 5:30 p.m. riding bikes near the neighborhood. They were heading towards Robin Hood Hills, a wooded area near their homes. Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, all age 8, frequently played in the area. Early evening, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., parents began searching when the boys failed to return home for dinner. Dana Moore, Michael's mother, called other parents to see if the boys were at friends' houses. Mike Byers, Christopher's stepfather, and Terry Hobbs, Stevie's stepfather, joined the search. 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., families continued to search the neighborhood and surrounding areas, including Robin Hood Hills. 9:24 p.m., Dana Moore called the West Memphis Police Department to report her son Michael missing. Shortly after, Mark Byers and Pamela Hobbs also contacted the police to report Christopher and Stevie missing. The West Memphis police began a limited search but didn't immediately escalate efforts, as missing children were often assumed to be runaways or playing late. Officers conducted a brief search of the Robin Hood the Robin Hood Hills that night, but didn't find the boys. Discovered their bikes and their bodies. On the afternoon of May 6, 1993, a police search team discovered the boys' bicycles in drainage ditch in the Robin Hood Hills. Shortly thereafter, the bodies of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers were found submerged in the same area. Several parents later expressed frustration with the police responses on the evening of May 5th, arguing that more immediately and conducted efforts might have expedited the search. The discovery of the bicycles belonging to Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers was a pivotal moment in the investigation into the disappearance and murders. Here are the details. Discovery of the bikes. Date May 6th, 1993, the day after the boys were reported missing, time around 1:30 p.m. Location: a drainage ditch in the Robin Hood Hills, a wooded area near where the boys were last seen. Details of the discovery: drainage ditch. The bicycles were found submerged in a muddy drainage ditch within the Robin Hood Hills. They were potentially concealed by the muddy water and debris. Search team. Law enforcement officers and search volunteers were combing the area when they discovered the bicycles. The search became more focused on the drainage ditch after the bikes were found. Condition: the bicycles were muddy and appeared to have deliberately placed in the ditch. This discovery heightened concerns that foul play was involved. Impact: the bike discovery, nearing the search. Finding the bikes led the searchers to intensify their efforts in the immediate area around the ditch. This ultimately resulted in the discovery of the boys' body later that afternoon. Connection to the crime. The location of the bike, and their concealment, suggesting they were deliberately hidden, pointing to a calculated effort by the perpetrators to cover up evidence. After the bikes were found, and searchers began systematically probing the water in the area. At approximately 1:45 p.m., a searcher found the bodies of 3 boys submerged in the same drainage ditch. The discovery of the bodies of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers on May 6, 1993 was tragic and a defining moment in the Memphis 3 case. Time of the discovery: May 5th, 1993. The 3 boys were last seen around 6:30 p.m. riding their bikes in their Memphis 3 neighborhood. When they didn't return home, their families reported them missing that evening. A search by family members and police began immediately. May 6, 1993 afternoon, around 1:45 p.m., a juvenile patrol officer, Steve Jones, and Memphis police officer Mike Allen discovered a child's tennis shoe floating in a drainage ditch in an area known as Robin Hood Hills, a wooded area close to the boys' neighborhood. Location of the bodies: the ditch, part of a larger wooded area, was shallow but muddy, with dense brush surrounding it. The bodies were submerged in water and concealed by debris. The state of the bodies: binding. All 3 boys were found naked and hogtied with their own shoelaces. Their wrists were tied to their ankles behind their backs. Injuries: Christopher Byers suffered the most severe injuries, including mutilation of his genital area, which fueled early speculation about a ritualistic killing. Stevie Branch and Michael Moore both suffered severe head injuries caused by blunt force trauma. There were signs of cuts and abrasions. The boys' clothing was found in a ditch near their bodies. Some of the clothing had been tied in knots, and others were later found weighed down with sticks in the muddy water. An observation by investigators. The scene appeared to have indicated a deliberate attempt to conceal the bodies, as they were submerged and partially obscured were destroyed by debris. Earlier photos and assumptions by investigators leaned towards the idea of a ritualistic or cult-like killing, influenced by the satanic panic atmosphere of the time. Autopsy findings. The autopsies confirmed that the boys had been beaten and drowned. The injuries in Christopher Byers initially believed mutilation were later reviled by forensics experts, with some suggesting that they may have been the result of animal activity after death. The discovery of the bodies should shock the community and prompt a highly emotional response. The brutality of the crime and the young age of the victims created intense public pressure to find and prosecute the perpetrators quickly, which some believe led to a flawed investigation and wrongful convictions. Gitchell served as the chief inspector of the Memphis Police Department's Criminal Investigative Division during the investigation of the 1993 murders of 3 8-year-old boys in Memphis, Arkansas, a case that led to controversial convictions of Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Kelly Jr., collectively known as Memphis 3. Investigation position. As chief inspector, Gitchell led the investigation into the murders, overseeing the collection of evidence, interrogations, and overall direction of the case. Interrogation of Jesse Kelly. Gitchell was directly involved in the interrogation of Jesse Kelly Jr., whose confession played a pivotal role in the arrest and significant convictions. The method used during this interrogation had been widely criticized, particularly given Jesse Kelly's intellectual disabilities and the inconsistencies in his statements. During a press conference, when he asked to rate the strength of the case against the accused on the scale of 1 to 10, Gitchell famously responded, an 11. Inducting his confidence in the evidence gathered. 6. Gitchell's handling of the investigation had been scrutinized for potential tunnel vision, focusing on the 3 teenagers to the exclusion of the other leads. Critics argued that this approach may have led to the investigative oversights and overlooking of alternative suspects. In May 1994, shortly after the trial was concluded, Gitchell resigned from his position as the head of the detective division. While the official reasons for his resignation were not publicly detailed, it occurred in growing controversy surrounding the case. Gitchell's role in the Memphis 3 case remains a subject of debate. Supporters of the convicted men view his investigative methods as symbolic of a rush to judgment and potentially misconduct that they believe belong to the wrongful convictions. Controversially, others see his actions as a law enforcement officer striving to solve a heinous crime under intense public pressure. The case continues to be analyzed in various media, including documentaries, books, and highlighting in the complexities and the controversies of the investigation led by Gitchell. Gary Jiver was a juvenile probation officer in Memphis, Arkansas, who became heavily involved in the investigation and the prosecution of the Memphis 3. He is a controversial figure in the case due to his role in targeting Damian Eccles, as well as his promotion as the theory that the murders were connected to the satanic rituals. Driver was Damien's probation officer. Prior to the 1993 murders, Eccles had been under his supervision for unrelated juvenile offenses. Driver believed that Damien was deeply involved in the satanic practices, citing Eccles' interest in the occult, heavy metal music, and uncontroversial behavior. Driver was a stench believer of the idea that satanic cults were active in the Memphis 3 area. He compiled a file of supposed satanic activity, much of it speculative and based on rumors. Driver frequently spoke to police and others about his belief that Damien Eccles was the leader in a satanic cult, which heavily influenced the direction of the investigation. Accusations and beliefs played a critical role in shaping the police theories that the murders were part of a satanic ritual. His testimony and notes about Damien were used during the trials to paint a picture of him as a dangerous cult-involved figure, despite the lack of concrete evidence. Driver's claims about the satanic activity and Damien's involvement were based largely on hearsay and circumstantial observations. Critics argue that his bias against Damien contributed to the police focusing on him as a suspect, ignoring other potential leads. Promotion of satanic panic. Driver's obsession with Satanism was seen as a part of a broader satanic panic of the 1980s and the 1990s, a period marked by widespread but unfounded fears of ritualistic crimes. His influence penetrated these fears within the Memphis community and the investigation. Tunnel vision. Driver's focus on Damien Eccles as the primary suspect may have caused law enforcement to disregard evidence and alternate suspects that didn't fit the satanic narrative. After the convictions of the Memphis 3, J. Driver largely faded from public view. He has been criticized extensively in books and documentaries and in public discourse surrounding the case. His role is often cited as an example of how personal biases and cultural hysteria can distort investigations and contribute to wrongful convictions. J. Driver remains a controversial figure in the history of the Memphis 3 case. His involvement highlights the dangers of confirmation biases in criminal investigations and the impact of the societal fears such as the satanic panic on justice. Steve Jones was Jason Baldwin's juvenile probation officer, played a critical role in the Memphis 3 case, particularly in its early stages. Steve Jones, like Jerry Driver, Damien's probation officer, held beliefs that the satanic activity was prevalent in the area, which influenced the investigation and ultimately contributed to the arrest of 3 teenagers. Steve Jones was present at the discovery of the victims' bodies in the Robin Hood Hills on May 6, 1993. He later claimed to have immediately suspected Damien Eccles upon seeing the crime scene, reportedly due to Damien's reputation and perceived interest in the occult. Influential investigation, Jones worked closely with Jerry Driver, Damien's probation officer, and shared similar concerns about the satanic activity in the area. Together, Jones and Driver frequently discussed their beliefs that Damien and his friends, including Jason Baldwin, were involved in a satanic cult. Jason Baldwin was under Jones's supervision as a part of the juvenile probation program. Despite being described by many as quiet and well-behaved teenager, Baldwin's association with Damien Eccles led Jones to viewing him with suspicion. Jones provided information about Jason and Damien's behaviors and associations to law enforcement, helping bear narrative of their alleged involvement in a satanic ritual. Jones later testified about his observations and interactions with the teenagers, contributing to the portrayal of Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin as dangerous and connected to occult practices. Like Jay Jiver, Jones has been criticized for allowing personal biases and the broader satanic panic to shape his view of Jason Baldwin and Damien Eccles. His immediately suspicion of Damien and Jason at the crime scene has been seen as a confirmation bias. Jones, along with Jiver, helped frame the investigation's focus on Satanism, despite the lack of physical or forensic evidence supporting these theories. The beliefs likely influenced law enforcement to concentrate on Damien, Jason, and Jesse Kelly, while ignoring alternative leads. Chief Jones' investigation in the case shows how deeply the satanic panic affected the investigation of the Memphis 3. His role alongside Jay Jiver contributed to the initial focus on Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin, shaping a narrative that has since been widely discussed. Damien Eccles was questioned multiple times during the investigation of the Memphis 3 case. These interrogations occurred before his arrest and played a significant role in law enforcement's focus on him as the alleged ringleader in the murders. Here's a detailed breakdown of his questioning. Timeline of questioning. Initial interview, May 1993. Damien was first questioned informally by the police. Soon after the murders were discovered. The questioning was based on his reputation in the community as somebody interested in the occult and alternative lifestyles, which drew suspicion in the context of the satanic panic of the 1990s. Law enforcement asked general questions about his beliefs and interests and whereabouts on the day of the murders. Follow-up interrogations, late May 1993. Police brought Damien in for further questioning about rumors and tips from the community suggested he might be involved. During these sessions, police focused heavily on his interest in the Wicca, occult practices, and heavy metal music, attempting to tie these interests to the crime. Damien reportedly maintained his innocence and cooperated with investigators. Polygraph test mid-May 1993. Damien argued to take a polygraph test, which the police claimed he failed. The results, however, were later criticized as unreliable and expert question rather than the test was conducted under proper conditions. The supposed failure of the polygraph test increased law enforcement suspicion of him. Significant questioning, late May to June 1993. Investigators continued to question Damien informally multiple times, often focusing on his associations, particularly with Jason Baldwin and Jesse Kelly, and the police reportedly asked Damien to explain the details of the case. His beliefs and anyone acknowledged that he might have had bad about the murders. Despite extensive questioning, police failed to gather direct evidence linking Damien to the crime. Why was Damien questioned so frequently? Profiling. Damien was targeted due to his uncontroversial lifestyle, including his interest in the occult and dark clothing, which made him an outcast in the conservative town of Memphis. His confidence and sarcastic demeanor during questioning reportedly frustrated investigators and fueled their belief that he might be guilty. Rumors and community tips. Damien's reputation in the community led to numerous tips from locals who claimed he was involved based on his interests and personality. These rumors played into law enforcement's confirmation biases. The high-profile nature of the murders and public outrage put intense pressure on law enforcement to find suspects quickly. Damien felt their perceived notions of a satanic killer. Damien Damien constantly denied any involvement in the murders and cooperated with the investigation. No physical evidence or credible witnesses' testimony emerged from these sessions linked him to the crime. Despite this, Damien's questions combined with Jesse Miskelly's coarse confession led to his arrest on June 3rd, 1993. Key evidence: lack of evidence. Police had no direct evidence tying Damien to the crime and relied heavily on his interest and demeanor as justification for targeting him. Bias. Investigators seemed to be more focused on confirming their theory of a satanic ritual killing rather than the objectivity examining the evidence. The coarse confession of Jesse Miskelly Jr. was one of the most pivotal yet controversial aspects of the Memphis case. It served as the foundation for the prosecutor's case against Miskelly, Damien Echols, and Jason Baldwin. Despite glaring inconsistency, questions about the circumstances under which it was obtained. Interrogation and circumstances. Jesse Miskelly, a 17-year-old with an IQ of 72, borderline intellectual functioning, was interrogated for over 12 hours on June 3rd, 1993, without a lawyer or parent present. Only 2 hours of the interrogation were recorded, leaving much of what conspired undocumented. Police reportedly used leading and suggestive questions to lead the confession. Context of the confession. Jesse initially denied involvement, but eventually stated that he, Damien Echols, and Jason Baldwin had murdered the boys as a part of a satanic ritual. He provided a series of contradictory statements, such as claiming the murders happened in the morning when the boys were still at school, incorrectly describing how the boys were tied, later corrected after the police prompted him. Jesse's descriptions of the crime scene and events often matched publicly available information referred to him by the police. Shortly after confessing, Jesse recanted, claiming that he had been pressured and coerced by the police. He stated that he told the police what they wanted to hear so they could let him go. Mentions of closing confession. Lengthy interrogation. Jesse was questioned for hours without breaks or proper legal representation. His low cognitive abilities made him especially vulnerable to coercion and suggestive questioning. Leading questions. Police reportedly corrected Jesse when his answers didn't align with the known facts, effectively feeding him the details they wanted to hear. For example, when Jesse said the murders happened in the morning, police pressured him until he changed his answer to match their timeline. Manipulation. Police likely used tactics such as lying about evidence and suggesting leniency if Jesse confessed. Jesse later stated that he didn't fully understand what he was agreeing to during the interrogation. Jesse's confession was the primary evidence used to convict him and implicated Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin. The prosecution relied heavily on the recorded segments of the confession, despite its inconsistencies. The defense argued that the confession was unreliable due to the coercion, Jesse's low IQ, and the absence of corroborating evidence. Expert witnesses, including Richard Ossoff, testified about the coercive behavior of the interrogation and the likelihood of false confessions under such circumstances. Public perception. The confession fueled a narrative of satanic motive, aligning with the satanic panic fears of the 1990s. Many in the media, despite its flaws. Legal experts. Many legal experts and wrongful conviction advocates have pointed to Jesse's confession as a textbook example of a false confession obtained through coercion. DNA evidence. Later, the DNA tests showed no physical evidence linking Jesse, Damien, or Jason to to the crime scene, further discrediting the confession. The brutal nature of the murders and the public demand for justice most likely pushed the investigators to act to close the case quickly. The police appeared to have targeted Jesse, Damien, and Jason based on their perceived outsider status and interests, shaping the investigation to fit their narrative. The court allowed the confession to be used despite the clear signs of corrosion and contradictions. The court's confession remains one of the most continuous aspects of the case, serving as a reminder of the dangers of the improper interrogation techniques. The investigation into the murders of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers began immediately after their bodies were discovered on May 6, 1993 in Robin Hood Hills, Memphis, Arkansas. The investigation was marked by controversial tactics, limited evidence, and public pressure, ultimately leading to the arrest and conviction of the Memphis Three, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly. The crime scene was hectic, with many individuals, including police, reporters, and onlookers, present during the recovery of the bodies. The area was not properly secure, and evidence collection methods were criticized for being sloppy and incomplete. No fingerprints, hair, or other forensics evidence conclusively linking anyone to the crime were recovered at the scene. Speculation. Early in the investigation, law enforcement suspected the murders were tied to a satanic ritual due to the nature of the injuries, especially the mutilation of Christopher Byers. This satanic panic era influenced investigators to focus on individuals with any connection to occult practices or alternative lifestyles. Focus on Damien Echols. Damien Echols, an 18-year-old high school dropout, known for his interest in the occult, dark clothing, and heavy metal music, quickly became a primary suspect. His unconventional appearance and behavior made him an easy target in the conservative community. Law enforcement interpreted his confidence and interest in certain subjects as a sign of guilt. The role of Jesse Miskelly interrogation. On May 3, 1993, a 17-year-old Jesse Miskelly, a friend of Damien Echols, was brought in for questioning. Miskelly, an IQ of 72, borderline intellectual functioning, and was interrogated for over 12 hours without a lawyer or his parents present. He eventually confessed to the murders, claiming he, Damien, Jason committed the crime as part of a satanic ritual. However, his confession was riddled with inconsistencies, including the time of the murders and details about the crime scene. Recantation. Jesse Miskelly recanted after his confession shortly after, claiming it was coerced, and despite this, his statement was used as a key piece of evidence. On June 3rd, 1993, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly Jr. were arrested and charged with the murders. There is no physical evidence linking the suspects to the crime scene. DNA testing later conducted in the 2000s revealed no match to the three teenagers. The prosecution relied heavily on questionable testimony, including that of a local man, Vicky Hutchinson, who claimed to have overheard Damien's confession to the murders. Hutchinson later recanted his testimony, admitting it was fabricated under police pressure. Expert testimony. The prosecution brought in a self-proclaimed occult expert to argue that the murders were part of a satanic ritual. His credibility was later called into question. Controversial aspects. Bias. The investigation was influenced by a community sphere satanic activity and suspicions of outsiders like Damien Echols and his friends. Lack of evidence. No forensic evidence tied the Memphis Three to the murders. The coercion of Jesse Miskelly's confession raised serious concerns about police practices. Alternate suspects. Over time, evidence emerged suggesting other individuals, including Terry Hobbs, Stevie's stepfather, might have been involved. Hobbs' DNA was later found on one of the ligatures, although it was inconclusive. Outcome of the investigation. The investigation led the convictions of the Memphis 3, Jesse Miss Kelly, life plus 40, Jason Baldwin, life imprisonment without parole, Damien Eccles sentenced to death. The investigation faced widespread criticism, influenced by political hysteria, lack of evidence, and questionable practices. The Memphis 3 case relied heavily on witness testimonies, many of which were later discredited or deemed unreliable. These witnesses played a significant role in the arrest and conviction of Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, Jesse Miss Kelly Jr., despite the lack of physical evidence linking them to the crime. Q&A Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. confession witness. Well, Jesse's confession, obtained during a lengthy and coercive police interrogation, was the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Details. He claimed that Damien Eccles, and Jason Baldwin committed the murders during a satanic ritual. The confession was riddled with inconsistencies, such as incorrect times and details of the crime. Jesse later recanted his confession, stating it was coerced, but it was still used as evidence in court. Jesse had an low IQ 72 and was particularly susceptible to coercion in making his confession highly controversial. Vicky Hutchinson, a local woman who claimed to have overheard Damien's confessing to murders during a cult meeting. Details. Hutchinson was initially involved herself in the case to help law enforcement, and later claimed Damien made incriminating statements in her presence. She also testified that Damien took her to an SBAT, a Wiccan ceremony, which was used to support a prosecution's satanic ritual theory. Hutchinson later admitted that her testimony was fabricated under police pressure. Her claims were inconsistent and unsupported by other evidence. Michael Carson, a jailhouse informant who testified against Jason Baldwin, details. Carson claimed Jason confessed to him while they were both in juvenile detention. Issues. Carson's credibility was highly questionable, as his testimony emerged after police interrogation. He later admitted that his statement was likely fabricated in exchange for leniency in his own legal troubles. Dr. Del Griffiths, an occult expert, a prosecution expert who testified about the murders being a part of a satanic ritual, details. Griffiths had a minimal credentials and claimed that Damien's interest in Wicca and the cults proved a satanic motive. His expertise was widely discredited as he lacked formal training in criminology or the occult. In Hutchinson, child witnesses, an 8-year-old boy who initially claimed to have witnessed the murders. Details. Aaron, a friend of the victims, told police a made-up story of the boys being killed as a part of a satanic ritual. He later recanted, and his statements were inconsistent and contradicted physical evidence. It was later revealed that Aaron was likely cursed or influenced by police. Other witnesses, Nolan Hollingworth and family, claimed to have seen Damien Eccles and Damien Tier, his girlfriend, walking near Robin Hood Hills on the night of the murders. Their statements were inconsistent and didn't match the timeline of the crime. Richard Offhoff, expert for the defense, testified that the coercive nature of Jesse Miss Kelly's confession argued that Jesse's intellectual disabilities made him vulnerable to police manipulation. Many of the witnesses had motives for fabricating or exaggerating their testimony, such as avoiding their own legal troubles or gaining favor with the law enforcement. Testimonies were often inconsistent, uncorroborated, or contradicted by physical evidence. The prosecution relied heavily on those witnesses to compensate the lack of forensic evidence, leading to significant controversy over the fairness of the arrests of Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly in Memphis 3 case occurred on June 3, 1993, less than a month after the murders of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. The arrests were controversial and based largely on a coerced confession, circumstantial evidence, and community pressure to solve the crime. The key events leading to the arrest, the role of Jesse Misskelley's confession. On June 3rd, Jesse Misskelley Jr., a 17-year-old acquaintance of Damien Eccles, was brought in for questioning. Jesse, who had a low IQ 72, was interrogated for over 12 hours, much of which was not recorded. Under coercion, Jesse confessed to participating in the murders alongside Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin, describing the crime as a part of a satanic rituals. Inconsistencies. Jesse's confession contained numerous factual errors, such as the time of the crime. He initially stated it occurred in the morning when the victims were in school, and the methods of the tying of the victims. Police corrected Jesse multiple times during the interrogation to align his statements with known facts of the case. Focus on Damien Eccles. Damien was already a person of interest due to his interest in Wicca and heavy metal music and dark clothing, which drew suspicion in the conservative town of Memphis during the Satanic Panic era. Police viewed him as the leader of the group, despite having no physical evidence connecting him to the crime. Jesse's confession implicated Damien as the ringleader, sealing the case against him. Jason Baldwin, a 16-year-old and a close friend of Damien Eccles, was arrested based on his association with Damien. Jesse Misskelley's confession placed Jason at the scene, though there were no physical evidence or direct testimony linking Jason to the crime. The arrest process. Date June 3rd, 1993, Memphis, location Memphis, Arkansas. Police arrested Jesse Misskelley first based on his confession. Soon after, they arrested Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin. The arrests were made amid intense media coverage and growing public hysteria over the brutal nature of the murders. Reasons for the crime. Jesse Misskelley's confession. Jesse's confession was the primary basis for the arrest, despite its inconsistencies and coercive nature. Community pressure. The horrific nature of the crime and public demand for swift justice created intense pressure on the law enforcement to identify and arrest suspects quickly. Circumstantial evidence. Investigators pointed to Damien's interest in the occult and heavy metal music as circumstantial evidence of the satanic motive. Lack of alternative suspects. Police didn't seriously pursue other leads, such as alternative suspects or evidence pointing to somebody outside the trio. Controversial aspects of the arrest. No physical evidence. There is no forensic evidence connecting any of the three to the crime scene. Reliance on a satanic panic. The arrests and charges were heavily influenced by societal fears of satanic rituals, which clouded the investigation. Coerced confession. Jesse Misskelley's confession was obtained through questionable interrogation tactics and later recanted, but was still used as the basis for the arrest and trials. The arrest led to the trials of three teenagers where they were convicted in 1994. Damien Eccles sentenced to death. Jason Baldwin sentenced to life without parole. Jesse Misskelley sentenced to life plus 40 years. The lack of evidence and reliance on Jesse's confession were widely criticized and became focal points for advocacy and legal appeals in the following years. The trials of Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Misskelley Jr., collectively known as Memphis 3, took place in 1994. These trials were controversial due to the lack of physical evidence, reliance on dubious testimonies, and the influence of the satanic panic of the time. Each defendant faced separate proceedings, with Misskelley's trial occurring first, Eccles and Baldwin being tried together afterward. Jesse Misskelley Jr.'s trial. Dates July 18th, 1994 through February 4th, 1994. Location Clay County, Arkansas. Moved due to pre-trial publicity. Charges: first-degree murder of Michael Moore and second-degree murder of Stevie Branch and Christopher Byers. Key points: coerced confession. Jesse's confession was the centerpiece for the prosecution case. Despite it being recanted, the confession was admitted as evidence, and the jury was not informed of his inconsistencies or the coercive circumstances under which it was obtained. no physical evidence. The prosecution had no physical evidence tying Miss Kelly to the crime scene. His confession contained multiple errors about the time, methods, and details of the crime. Miss Kelly was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment plus 40 years. Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin trials dates February 22nd, 1994 through March 18th, 1994. Jonesboro, Arkansas. Capital murder of all three victims. Key point: satanic ritual allegations. The prosecution framed murders as a part of a satanic ritual orchestrated by Damien Eccles. Damien's interest in Wicca, heavy metal music, and occult literature was later used to portray him as a satanic ringleader. Questionable evidence. A fiber analyst linked fibers found at the scene to the clothing in Damien's and Eccles' homes, but this evidence was substantial and not definitive. The prosecution presented no physical evidence directly tying either a defendant to the murders. Witness testimony. Witnesses including Michael Carson, a jailhouse informant who claimed Baldwin confessed to him, and Carson's credibility was later questioned as he sought leniency in exchange for his testimony. Fitchie Hutchinson testified about a supposed satanic meeting involving Eccles, but she later admitted her statements were fabricated under police pressure. Damien's demeanor. Eccles' confidence and sarcasm in the court were used by the prosecution to paint him as remorseless and arrogant, which influenced the jury's perception. Verdict and sentence. Jason Baldwin, found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Damien Eccles, found guilty, sentenced to death by lethal injection, making him the primary focus of the case. Reliance on satanic panic. The prosecution's theory was based on assumptions that the murders were part of a satanic ritual, despite the lack of supporting evidence. No physical evidence. The convictions were secured without any forensic evidence linking the defendants to the crime. Ineffective defense. The defense team struggled to counter the prosecution's narrative with limited resources and community biases against the three defendants. Media influence. Excessive media coverage and public outrage created a hostile environment for the defense, contributing to a biased jury pool. The convictions were widely criticized by legal experts and advocates who pointed out lack of evidence and the influence of societal fears. In the years following trials, new evidence, including DNA testing, failed to link the Memphis Three to the crime scene and raise questions about the fairness of their convictions. The Memphis Three, Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly Jr., spent over 18 years in prison following their convictions in 1994. Each faced unique challenges during their prison time, and their experiences marked by isolation effects maintain hope and growing public support for their exoneration. Damien Eccles sentenced death row at Vernon Unit, Arkansas. Conditions. Damien spent nearly 2 decades in solitary confinement on death row. He lived in a small cell with minimal human interaction, allowed out for only an hour a day in a secured area. The consistent threat of execution and the harsh conditions took a severe toll on his mental and physical health. Coping mechanism. Eccles turned to reading and writing, meditation to survive the isolation. He wrote extensively, producing journals and later a memoir, Life After Death, which details his experiences on death row and reflects on his case. Aggressive and self-public sport. Damien became the focal point of advocacy efforts due to his death sentence. He later received letters of support from activists, celebrities, and original citizens who believed in his innocence. Jason Baldwin, sentenced life imprisonment without parole at Vineyard Unit, Arkansas. Confessions. Jason was housed in the general public population, which exposed him to the dangers of violence and gang activity. Despite his life sentence, he maintained positive outlook and worked better to work him to work better to work to better himself through education. Coping mechanism. Jason pursued his education while in prison. He earned his GED. He focused on reading and art, continuing to develop his talent for drawing, which he was shown as he was seen as a teenager. Public advocacy. Jason was seen as a tragic figure of a teenager sentenced to life on a crime he didn't commit. His crime committed a commitment to improving himself garnered sympathy from supporters. Jesse Miss Kelly, life plus 40 years at various Arkansas prisons. Jason, like Jason, was housed in the general prison population. His low IQ and intellectual challenges made prison life particularly difficult for him. He often struggled to understand the legal system and relied on his attorneys and advocate for guidance. Jesse kept a low profile in prison, avoiding trouble as much as possible. He reportedly found solace in routine and occasionally visits from the family and supporters. Public advocacy. Jason's coarse confession and intellectual disabilities made his conviction one of the most criticized aspects of the case. Advocacy groups highlighted these factors in their efforts to secure his release. Paradise Lost documentaries. The 1996 HBO documentary Paradise Lost, the children murders at Robin Hood Hills, sought national and international attention to the case. 2 sequels released in 2000 and 2011 further explore the flaws in the investigation and trial and generating disparate support for the Memphis 3. Celebrity involvement. High-profile figures like Eddie Vedder, Natalie Maines, Johnny Depp became vocal advocates for their release. These celebrities helped fund legal efforts and brought attention to the injustices in the case. In 2000s, the new DNA testing event showed no evidence linking the Memphis 3 to the crime scene. Blasting cause further exoneration. Challenges to face in prison. All 3 men experienced the mental strain of long-term incarnation, with Damien suffering the most due to the isolation of death row. They were labeled as children killers, were exposed to threats and violence from other inmates. Knowing that they were innocent added to the psychological burden of their imprisonment. After 18 years and 72 days in prison, the 3 men were released on August 19, 2011, after entering an alpha plea, which allowed them to maintain their innocence, while acknowledging the state had enough evidence to convict them. The plea was part of a deal to avoid retrial while securing their intimate release. DNA testing played a political role in the ongoing fight for the justice for the Memphis 3 case. Over time, advancements in forensic science revealed significant shortcomings in the original investigation, ultimately contributing to the release of Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. Initial DNA test and ladies. During the original investigation and the trials, DNA testing was limited in scope and technology. No forensic evidence, blood, hair, or fingerprints was found linking the 3 suspects to the crime. Despite the lack of the DNA evidence, the prosecution relied on substantial evidence and Jesse Miss Kelly's confession to secure convictions. Advancement in DNA test in 2000s. Request for new testing. In early 2000s, attorneys for Memphis 3 filed motions for advanced DNA testing using new techniques. Testing focused on biological evidence collected from the crime scene involving victims' clothing, ligatures used to bind the victims, and organic materials found in the area. Hair and skin cells. Results in the DNA testing. In 2007, DNA testing revealed no genetic material from Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, or Jesse Miss Kelly was at the crime scene. A hair found on one of the ligatures consistent with Carrie Hobbs, the stepfather of Stevie Branch. The hair couldn't definitely place Hobbs at the scene, but raised questions about his potential involvement. Another hair found at the scene was consistent with Terry Hobbs' friend Jimmy Jacoby, though this too was too inconclusive. Impact of the DNA results. The lack of DNA evidence linking the rest of his three to the crime scene caused significant doubt on their guilt. These findings fueled public advocacy and intensified calls for their release. The DNA evidence also pointed to the possibility of alternative suspects such as Terry Hobbs, although new charges were filed. Animal experts viewing the case suggest that some of the injuries that was contributed to mutilation or ritualistic acts might have been caused by animal activity after death, further discrediting the prosecution's satanic ritual theory. Criticism of evidence handling. The original crime scene investigation was criticized for its mishandling of evidence, lack of proper chain of custody, and failure to secure the area that compromised the reliability of some of the forensic findings. Public appeals. The new DNA evidence was cornerstone of the appeals filed by the Memphis 3's defense teams. It's highlighted a lack of physical evidence tying them in to the murders and raised questions about the validity of their convictions. Although the DNA evidence didn't defiantly exonerate the Memphis 3, it actually assuming they were released in an alpha plea in 2011. Under the plea, the men maintained their innocence while acknowledging the state had enough evidence to convict them in a retrial. Despite the new evidence, no new DNA evidence, no new suspects have been officially charged or identified. Terry Hobbs has consistently denied involvement, and the hair evidence remains inconclusive. The Memphis 3, Damian Eggles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly Jr. filed multiple appeals during their 18 years in prison. These appeals focus on lack of physical evidence, questions about witness credibility, and advancements in forensic science that undermined the original convictions. The appeal process ultimately placed a significant qual in their release in 2011. Key appeals and legal efforts. Initial appeals. After their 1994 convictions, all three defendants filed appeals to the Arkansas Supreme Court, citing numerous trial errors. Key arguments. The reliance on Jesse Miskelly's coerced and conscientious confession, insignificant evidence to convict any of the three men, improper use of satanic panic to prejudice by the jury. The Arkansas Supreme Court upheld their convictions in 1996, rejecting these arguments. Advancement in forensic technology. Attorneys for the rest of history petitioned numerous evidence collected from the crime scene, including victims' clothing, ligatures, and biological material. In 2007, DNA tests revealed no DNA evidence linked the defendants to the crime scene. A hair consistent with Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch stepfather, was found on one of the ligatures throughout was not definite. In fact, these findings cast doubt on the original convictions and fueled public advocacy for their release. Habeas corpus petitions 2007-2010. The defense teams filed motions citing new DNA evidence and experts' reviews suggesting that some injuries contributed to the victim were caused by animal activity, not human actions. They also highlighted misconduct by law enforcement, including Jesse's coercion of Jesse Miskelly's confession, failing to pursue alternative aspects. Federal habeas corpus. Damian, facing a death row sentence, filed a federal habeas petition arguing that his trial violated his constitutional rights. The petition was delayed as the legal team worked together for more evidence. In 2010, the Arkansas Supreme Court ordered lower courts to reconsider the case and hire new education bases, and later Johnny The lower court considered the testing the new light. In 2019, the Arkansas Supreme Court had ordered the lower court to reconsider the case and allow new DNA evidence and claims the judge's misconduct during the original trials. The decision opened the door for potential retrial and marking a turning point in the case. And negotiated the alpha plea. On August 19, 2011, all three men entered alpha pleas, which allowed them to maintain their innocence while acknowledging that the prosecution had significant evidence to convict them in a retrial. In exchange, they were sentenced to time served and immediately released after spending 18 years and 78 days in prison. Rationale of the plea. The offered plea avoided the risk of new trials, which would have resulted in prolonged legal battles and reinstate convictions. Prosecutors were under pressure due to mounting evidence of defense innocence, but wanted to avoid full exoneration. Courts were initially hesitant to revisit the case despite growing public support and evidence undermining the original verdicts. Public and media pressure. The release of the HBO documentaries Paradise Lost, 1996, 2000 and 2011, but widespread attention to the case exposed flaws in the investigation and trials. Alternative suspects. The defense pushed for investigations into other suspects, particularly Terry Hobbs, but no new evidence, no charges were filed. The appeal process highlighted the symptomatic issues justice system, including misuse, coercive confession, and impact of public hysteria, and a failure to pursue reliable evidence. The Memphis 3 case remains a symbol of wrongful convictions and the importance of re-examining flawed trials. The Memphis 3 never received a new trial, despite significant legal and public efforts to overturn their convictions. However, the case came close to retrial in 2010 when the Arkansas Supreme Court ordered the lower court to consider the conviction based on new evidence and allegations of joint misconduct. This pivotal decision led to their eventual release in 2011 through an alpha plea, which allowed them to maintain their innocence without formal retrial. Key development leading towards a possible retrial. Arkansas Supreme Court ruling 2010. In November 2010, the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled that new DNA evidence introduced into the case warrant reconsideration. Allegations of jury misconduct during the original trials required further investigation. The defense were entitled to a hearing to determine whether those issues justified retrial. Jury misconduct allegations. It was revealed that some of the juries had discussed unadmissible evidence, including Jesse Miscalli's confession, which was not supposed to be used against Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin. This raised questions about the fairness of the original trials. The ruling effective for a potential retrial by instructing the lower court to reevaluate the case in light of these findings. Evidence supporting retrial. DNA testing. DNA testing on evidence from the crime scene showed no link to Eccles, Baldwin, or Miscalli. A hair consistent with Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's stepfather, was later found in one of the experts' testimony. Forensics experts argue that some of the injuries on the victims were likely caused by animal activity after death, not by a human perpetrator. Public advocacy. Widespread support for the activists and legal experts and celebrities highlighted the weakness in the case against the Memphis 3. Rather than proceed with the retrial, the state negotiated an alpha plea with the defendants in August, December 2011. Why no retrial? Prosecution's perspective. A retrial would have exposed the flaws in the original investigation and trials, potentially embarrassing the state and leading to full exonerations. The alpha plea allowed the state to close the case without admitting wrongdoing to the defendant's perspective. While retrial would have cleared their names, it also posed a significant risk, such as prolonged prison sentence, or even a repeated conviction. On August 19, 2011, the three men entered Alford Place, maintaining their innocence but acknowledging that the state had enough evidence to convict them in a retrial. They were sentenced to time served and released after spending over 18 years in prison. The lack of a retrial meant that the Memphis Three were not fully exonerated and remain officially convicted of the murders. The true perpetrators have never been identified or prosecuted. The case continues to be a source of debate and advocacy, with ongoing efforts to achieve full exoneration. After the release in 2011, the Memphis Three, Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly Jr. faced the challenge of rebuilding their lives after spending over 18 years in prison for crimes they maintained they didn't commit. Each had been a different path, shaped by their experience, and continued the pursuit of justice and exoneration. Damian Eccles, adjusting to freedom. Damian spent most of his time in solitary confinement on death row. The transition to life outside the prison was particularly challenging due to his lack of social interaction and physical health issues, including vision problems caused by years in near darkness. He moved to New York City and later to Salem, Massachusetts, with his wife Lori Davis, whom he married while on death row. Lori became a key advocate for his release. Damian became a public figure, speaking about his experience and advocating for criminal justice reform. He has written several books, including Life After Death, a memoir detailing his time in prison and release, High Magic and Angels and Archangels, books exploring spiritual practices that helped him cope in prison. He frequently speaks at events, appears in interviews, participates in documentaries to raise awareness of their ongoing convictions. Damian has pursued a career as an artist, creating visual art inspired by his spiritual practices and prison experiences. His art has been exhibited in galleries, and the proceeds often support advocacy efforts, ongoing legal efforts. Damian continues to seek full exoneration and works with legal team to overturn his conviction. Jason Baldwin Agassi. Jason, 34 when he was released, and quickly became involved in criminal justice reform efforts. He co-founded Proclaim Justice, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping wrongfully convicted individuals. Jason has spoken extensively about the importance of education and legal reform to prevent future miscarriages of justice. After his release, Jason moved to Texas and later settled in Seattle. Despite his traumatic experience, he's remained optimistic and focused on helping others. He has spoken about his gratitude for the support he received while in prison. Educational goals. Jason has planned to attend college and pursue a legal career, inspired by his own experience with the justice system. Jesse Miskelly Jr., low profile. Jesse's kept a much lower profile than Damian and Jason since his release. Struggling with his intellectual disabilities and the trauma of imprisonment, he has largely avoided media attention and public advocacy. Life in Arkansas. Jason remained in Arkansas and has lived a quiet life, reconnected with family and friends. He has expressed mixed feelings about the Alford plea, which allowed his release but prevented full exoneration. Jason has faced difficulties adjusting to life outside of prison, particularly given the stigma associated with the case and his limited understanding of the legal and social systems. All three remain connected in their shared fight for justice and exoneration. While they've taken different paths, they share a commitment to shedding light on wrongful convictions and advocating for criminal justice reform. On advocacy and public support, the case continues to grow attention for advocacy and celebrities and the public, with calls for a full investigation to identify the raw perpetrators. Damian, Jason, and Jesse have been benefited from the public support and financial aid from organizations and individuals who followed their case through documentaries like Paradise Lost and West of Memphis. The Memphis 3 release highlighted systematic issues of the justice system, including the misuse of coerced confessions, biases during the investigation, and failures for evidence handling. Their story remains a symbol of reliance and the ongoing need for reform. Since the release in 2011, the Memphis 3, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. have continued their efforts to fully clear their name. A major part of this effort had been seeking retesting of DNA evidence using modern forensic technology. This push has been faced numerous legal and procedural challenges, but remains critical focus for the men and their legal teams. Initial DNA 2007. The first round of advanced DNA testing in 2007 revealed no DNA evidence from the crime scene matched Damien, Jason, or Jesse. A hair consistent with Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's stepfather, was found in one of the ligatures under the hair. Another hair consistent with his son David Jacoby also was discovered. While these findings raised questions about alternative suspects, they were not definite. They weren't definite enough to overturn the convictions. Alpha plea complications. The alpha plea allowed the Memphis 3 to be released, but maintained their convictions, complicating the efforts to revisit the case and the testimony. Despite the release, the three men remain officially convicted, of which limits their legal standing to request new forensic testing and forensic technology. Since 2011, DNA testing has advanced significantly, particularly with the development of touch DNA, detects extremely small amounts of DNA left behind through skin contact. Genetic DNA uses DNA database to identify familial matches, even with the potential DNA profiles. These methods could be potentially identifying new suspects or exonerate the Memphis 3 conclusively. Damien's advocacy. Damien has been the most vocal advocate for the retesting of the DNA evidence, arguing that the modern technology could finally identify the true perpetrators. He filed a motion requesting access to remaining evidence, including the victim's clothing and ligatures, and biological materials collected at the crime scene. Echols and his legal team have emphasized that Arkansas authorities are ethically obligated to allow retesting to pursue justice. Resistance from the Arkansas authorities. The prosecutors and law enforcement has resisted new testing efforts, citing the alpha plea, which they argued settled the case legally. Concerns about chain of custody issues, whether these evidence have been pressured or properly. Willingness to revisit the case could expose flaws in the original investigation and prosecution. 2022 filing for the DNA testing. In 2022, Echols and his legal team formally requested that a DNA evidence be retested using modern techniques. They argued that the evidence still exists and could provide conclusive answers. However, the Arkansas Supreme Court denied the motion, citing procedural technicalities. Perversion of evidence. There's ongoing concerns about whether all the original evidence have been properly preserved. Some reports suggest that the key piece of evidence may have been lost or destroyed over the years. Political advocacy groups and the public figures continue to push for the transparency and credibility in the hands of the DNA evidence. These efforts have reunited interest in the case and the broader issue of wrongful convictions. Legal and ethical implications. Exoneration versus conviction. The Memphis 3 are still legally considered guilty due to the alpha plea. This complicates their ability to demand retesting and pursue exoneration obligations of the state. Many argue Arkansas has a moral and legal obligation to allow retesting, especially given the absence of physical evidence linking the three men to the crime. Petitions and appeals. Damien Echols and his legal team continue to explore legal avenues to force the state to allow retesting of the evidence. Public pressure remains a key tool in pushing for the transparency and justice in the case. There's an accountability. Efforts to retest the DNA are not just about exonerating the Memphis 3, but also about identifying the true perpetrators, bringing them to justice. In April 2024, the Arkansas Supreme Court issued a significant decision regarding the Memphis history case, particularly concerning Damien Echols' pursuit of advanced DNA testing on the crime scene evidence. In 1994, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Miss Kelly were convicted in the 1993 murders of 3 8-year-old boys in West Memphis, Arkansas. They were released in 2011 after entering alpha pleas, allowing them to maintain their innocence, while acknowledging that the prosecutors had significant evidence to convict them. Despite their release, the convictions remained on their records. Advancements in forensic technology, such as touch DNA analysis, has had the potential to detect minute traces of DNA left by individuals who came into contact with the evidence. Echols sought to utilize these techniques to test the crime scene evidence, aiming to identify the actual perpetrators and achieve full exoneration. In 2022, Echols filed a motion in Clayton County Court requesting access to the evidence for advanced DNA testing. The court denied the action, citing the procedural grounds, including questions about jurisdiction and the applicability of post-conviction relief statutes of individuals no longer incarcerated. On April 18, 2024, the Arkansas Supreme Court, in a 4-1-3 decision, reversed the lower court ruling, stating that the circuit court were wrong in denying Echols' request for DNA testing. The Supreme Court decision emphasizes that the advancement in DNA technology could provide critical insights into the case, potentially identifying the true perpetrators and advertising lingering doubts about the convictions, implications of the ruling, authorization of DNA testing. The Supreme Court decision allows Echols to proceed with the advanced DNA testing on the crime scene evidence, utilizing modern techniques that were unavailable during the original investigation and trials. Positive results from DNA testing could support efforts to fully exonerate Echols, Baldwin, Miss Kelly, and potentially leading to overturning of their convictions. Identification of the true perpetrators. The testing could also identify the DNA profiles of individuals other than the rest of history, potentially leading to new investigation and the apprehension of the actual perpetrators. Following the Supreme Court's decision, Echols' legal team is expected to coordinate with the forensic experts and relevant authorities to initiate DNA testing process. At the timeline for obtaining and analyzing the results will depend on various factors, including conditions of evidence and significant testing techniques deployed. The Arkansas Supreme Court on the pivotal moment on the ongoing efforts to seek justice and clarity in the Memphis case. The forthcoming DNA testing holds the potential to resolve long-standing questions and bring closure to the case that has captivated public attention for decades. As of December 2024, the DNA evidence in the Memphis case has not yet been undergone advanced testing authorized by the Arkansas Supreme Court. In April 2024, the court reversed the lower court's denial, granting Damien Echols the right to pursue new DNA testing on the crime scene evidence. Current status: legal proceedings. Following the Supreme Court's decision, Echols' legal team has been preparing to initiate the DNA testing process. This involves coordinating with the forensic experts and negotiating legal and procedural requirements to access and analyze the evidence. Evidence condition. Concerns may have been raised about the preservation and integrity of the original evidence. Given the passage of time and previous reports of potential mismanagement, ensuring the evidence is suitable for modern testing methods is a critical step for proceeding. Technical advancements. The planned testing aims to utilize the state-of-the-art forensic technology such as MVAC, DNA collection system, and genealogy, which has potentially to detect and analyze minute DNA samples that were previously undetected. Next steps: testing and initiation. Once all legal and procedural hurdles are clear, the actual DNA testing will commence. The duration of this process will depend on the condition of the evidence and significant methodology employed. Analysis and interpretation. After testing, forensic experts will analyze the results to determine if any DNA profiles can be identified, or rather they match any known individuals or point to new potential suspects. Legal implications. Depending on the outcomes, the results could have significant legal implications, potentially leading to further appeals or motions to overturn the original convictions. It is important to note that while the authorization for the new DNA testing marks a significant development in the pursuit of justice for the Memphis 3, and the process in the complex and time-consuming. As of now, the testing has not been completed, and the legal teams involved to continue to work deliberately to move the process forward. As of December 2024, the Memphis 3, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly Jr. continue their efforts to fully exonerate themselves from the 1993 murders and convictions for the murders of 3 young boys in Memphis, Arkansas. Recent developments. Arkansas Supreme decision. In April 2024, the Arkansas Supreme Court reversed a 2022 lower court decision granting Echols the right to pursue advanced DNA testing on crime scene evidence. The ruling opens the possibility of defining the actual perpetrators and clearing the names of the Memphis 3. Accuracy for the DNA test. Justice organizations, including the Innocence Project, has been instrumental in supporting the push for new DNA testing, emphasizing the potential modern forensic technology to uncover the truth. Current status of Memphis 3. Residing in Harlem, New York, Echols has authored several books, engaged in public speaking, focusing on wrongful convictions and spiritual practices. He remains a vocal advocate for justice reform and continues to seek full exoneration. Jason Baldwin, living in Austin, Texas. Baldwin co-founded Proclaim Justice, a non-profit organization dedicated to aiding wrongly convicted individuals. He's also pursuing undergraduate studies with the goal of obtaining a law degree. Jesse Miskelly Jr., maintaining a low public profile. Miskelly resides in West Memphis, Arkansas. He has largely stayed out of the public eye since his release. Ongoing efforts and challenges. The recent court ruling has paved the way to advanced DNA testing, but the process involves complex legal and procedural steps. The outcome of these tests could significantly impact the pursuit of full exoneration. Supporters and legal advocates continue to campaign for justice, emphasizing the importance of utilizing modern forensic methods to ratify post-judicial errors. The journey towards complete exoneration for the Memphis 3 is ongoing, with recent legal victories providing a renewed sense of hope. The forthcoming DNA testing holds the potential to fully resolve a case that has captivated the public attention for over 3 decades. The case against the Memphis 3, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly Jr. was built on substantial evidence, questionable witness testimony, and a controversial confession. There is no physical evidence directly linking the 3 to the murders, and much of the prosecutor's case relied on the social context of the Satanic Panic in the 1990s. Below is the breakdown of evidence presented against them. Jesse Miskelly's confession. Jesse Miskelly Jr., who has a borderline IQ of 72, confessed to the murders after 12 hours of police interrogation. In his confession, Miskelly implicated Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin as a part of the satanic ritual. Damien Echols was portrayed as the leader of the group and the alleged mastermind behind the murders. The prosecutors focused on his interest in the occult and Wicca and heavy metal music and dark clothing. Jason Baldwin was implicated largely due to his friendship with Damien Echols. The prosecutors argued that Baldwin was an accomplice and participated in the murders. A fabricated allegedly matching one found at the crime scene was said to have come from Baldwin's home. However, there was not a definitive and was highly controversial. Victims claimed she overheard Damien Echols confessing the murders during a supposed SBAT. Later recanted her testimony, admitting to fabricated under false police pressure. Michael Carson, a jailhouse informant who claimed that Jason Baldwin confessed to him while in detention. Carson's credibility was later questioned, and he also has a history of seeking leniency in exchange for testimonies made in local residents. Some witnesses provided statements that were inconsistent or based on rumors, such as seeing the boys with Eccles and Baldwin near the roads. Lack of alibi. The prosecution argued that all three defendants failed to provide credible alibis for the night of the murders. Damien Eccles claimed he was at home on the phone with his friends, but that was difficult to verify. Jason Baldwin stated that he was at home watching television. Jesse Miss Kelly claimed he was wrestling at the time, but struggled to articulate that clearly. Physical evidence. Key. No physical evidence such as DNA or fingerprints or blood was directly linked to any of the three to the crime scene. Further evidence was presented, but it was inconclusive and couldn't be definitively tied the suspects to the crime. The case was heavily influenced by cultural context of the Satanic Panic, a period of the 1980s and the 1990s, marked by widespread ritualistic satanic abuse. Prosecutors emphasized Damien Eccles' interest in the occult, portraying him as dangerous individuals capable of committing ritualistic murders. Jesse Miss Kelly's confession is widely regarded as coarse, unreliable, with legal experts pointing to his intellectual limitations and the police's suggestive questioning. Such as evidence was circumstantial and relied on prejudice rather than concrete proof. DNA testing has since shown no connection between the Memphis 3 and the crime scene, further discrediting the original evidence. The evidence against Memphis 3 has been widely criticized for being substantial, biased, and influenced by societal fears. Despite the convictions, no physical evidence ever tied them to the crime. Modern forensic advancements has further undermined the case against them. The Memphis 3, Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. has significant evidence to support their claims of innocence. Over the years, advancement in forensic science, the exposure of flaws in the original investigation, and new witness testimonies has further blasted the case further of exoneration. Whatever that word is. Evidence supporting their innocence. Lack of physical evidence. No physical evidence such as DNA, fingerprints, or blood ever tied Damien, Jason, or Jesse to the crime scene. Despite extensive searches and evidence collection, investigators could not find tools or weapons used in the murders, clothing, or other materials linking the three to the crime. DNA testing. In 2007, DNA testing revealed no genetic material from any of the three defendants was present at the crime scene or on the victims. A hair found in the literature used to blind Michael Moore was consistent with Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's stepfather. Another hair considered David Jacoby, Hobbs' friend, was found near the crime scene. These results cast doubt on the original convictions and suggesting the possibility of alternative suspects. False and coerced confession by Jesse Miss Kelly. Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. had a borderline IQ of 72, making him highly susceptible to coercion. His confession was obtained after more than 12 hours of interrogation, during which with no lawyer or legal guardian present. The confession contained numerous inconsistencies. He stated the murders occurred in the morning when the victims were still at school. He misdescribed the bindings and injuries to the boys while corrected by the police. Jesse later recanted his confession, claiming it was coerced. Questionable witness testimony. Many of the prosecution's witnesses later admitted their testimonies were either fabricated or coerced. Vicky Hutchinson claimed she overheard Damien confess, but later admitted she made up the story to avoid trouble with the police. Michael Carson, a jailhouse informant who said Jason Baldwin confessed to him later, admitted his testimony was false and given in exchange for leniency in his legal troubles. Alternate suspects: Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's stepfather. Hobbs became a person of interest after DNA testing in 2007 linked his hair to the crime scene. Witnesses claim to have seen Hobbs with the three boys near the crime. Near the time of the disappearance, Hobbs has documented history of violent behavior. Mr. Bojangles. On the evening of the murders, an unidentified man covered in blood and mud entered a nearby Bojangles restaurant. Police failed to properly investigate this lead, losing blood samples to collect from the residents, forensic analysts, and injuries. The prosecutors argued that injuries to the victims, particularly the genital mutilation of Christopher Byers, were evidence of a satanic ritual. Experts later concluded many of the injuries were caused by animal activity after the boys' death, not by the perpetrators. This finding undermined the satanic ritual theory used by prosecutors to secure convictions. The investigation was heavily influenced by the satanic panic of the 1990s, which created the biases against Damien Echols, who was interested in Wicca, heavy metal music, and occult theories. Law enforcement and prosecutors focused on the three teenagers, neglecting the other leads and alternative suspects. Evidence of jury misconduct during the trials emerged years later, with reports that the jurors discussed undismissible evidence, including Jesse Miss Kelly's confession, which wasn't supposed to be used against Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin. Alibis: Damien. Multiple witnesses testified that Damien was at home on the phone at the time of the murders. Jason Baldwin. Jason was at home with his family watching television. Jesse Miss Kelly. Jesse was at a wrestling match on the night of the murders, which was confirmed by several witnesses. The HBO Paradise Lost trilogy brought widespread attention to the flaws in the case. High-profile supporters like Johnny Depp, Eddie Vedder, and Natalie Maines of the Chicks raised awareness and funds for the defense. Organizations like the Innocent Project has supported ongoing efforts to exonerate the West Memphis Three. The lack of physical evidence, new forensic findings, and the identification of alternate suspects significantly weakened the original case. These factors led to the Alpha plea in 2011, allowing the Memphis Three to be released after 18 years while maintaining their innocence. Despite the lack of physical evidence, some people still believe the Memphis Three, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. are guilty of the 1993 murders of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. Here are the main reasons why they maintain their beliefs in their guilt. Dismiss confession. Why is the evidence guilt? Jesse has confessed to participating in the murders during a police interrogation. Providing details about the crime, he implicated Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and claiming that they committed the murders as a part of a ritual. Damien Echols' behavior and interest. Echols is interested in occult and Wicca, has heavy metal music, and dark clothing, was portrayed as suspicious. During the police questioning, Echols allegedly described the injuries to the victims in ways some believed only the killer could know. So some scans for evidence. The prosecution argued that fibers from the crime scene matched the fibers found in the homes of Baldwin and Echols. Witnesses claimed to have seen the boys with Echols and Baldwin on the day of the murders. Testimony from witnesses, including Vicky Hutchinson, claimed that Damien had confessed to the murders during a satanic meeting. Jailhouse informant Michael Carson stated that Jason Baldwin confessed to him in detention. The lack of strong alibi. Critics often point to the lack of solid alibis for all three defendants. Damien Echols claimed he was at home talking on the phone, but this could not be conclusively verified. Jason Baldwin claimed he was at home watching television with family members as witnesses. Jesse Miss Kelly provided inconsistent accounts of his whereabouts. Some have claimed that Echols acted smug or arrogant during the investigation and trial, which they interpreted as lack of remorse. The prosecution emphasizes Echols' demeanor, portraying him as someone who fit their narrative of a satanic ringleader. The prosecution argued that the murders were part of a satanic ritual, and Echols' interest in the occult made him a likely suspect. The Alpha plea. Critics argue by entering an Alpha plea in 2011, the Memphis Three effectively admitted that there was enough evidence to convict them. Many who believe in the guilt of Memphis 3 point to Jesse Miss Kelly's confession and the prosecution's portrayal of the betrayal of the defense as a key reasons. However, the case remains decisive, with modern forensics evidence and new testimony shifting public opinion towards their innocence. There are numerous reasons why many believe West Memphis 3, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. are innocent of the 1993 murders of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. These reasons are largely stemmed from flaws in the investigation and lack of physical evidence and new developments in forensic science. No DNA or fingerprints or blood linked the Memphis 3 to the crime scene. Despite extensive searches and testing, investigators could not find any weapons, tools, or personal items tied to the suspects. The prosecution relied almost entirely on circumstantial evidence and coerced testimony. Upon his confession, Jesse Miss Kelly, who had an IQ of 72, was interrogated for over 12 hours without a lawyer present. His confession was inconsistent with facts of the case, including the time of the murders. He initially said the crimes occurred in the morning while the boys were at school, the method of the binding, and the injuries of the victims, which he incorrectly described, until corrected by the police. He later recanted the confession shortly after, claiming it was coerced. Experts argued that his confession was unreliable and influenced by the police leading questions. The prosecution alleged the murders were part of a satanic ritual, but there is no evidence of a motive for the crime. The satanic panic of the 1980s and the 1990s heavily influenced investigations and public perception of the suspects, including Damien Echols. Modern analysts debunks the ritualistic theory, attributing injuries to post-death animal activity. Okay, DNA testing conclusion. Okay, advanced DNA testing, forensics testing showed no DNA evidence of the Memphis 3 at the crime scene on the victims. A hair found in literature used to tear Michael Moore was consistent with Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's stepfather. Another hair consistent with Hobbs' friend David Jacoby was near the crime scene. Implications: the lack of physical evidence tying the suspects to the crimes, combined with DNA testing pointing to other individuals, cast doubt on their guilt. Investigators concentrated on Damien Echols early in the case due to his interest in Wicca and heavy metal music and dark themes rather than following other leads. Potentially alternate suspects as Terry Hobbs and Mr. Bojangles, man unidentified bloody man, even at a nearby restaurant, seen at a nearby on the night of the murders, were not thoroughly investigated. Critical evidence, such as blood samples collected from Mr. Bojangles' incident, was lost or mishandled. Witness testimonies was fabricated coerced. Vicky Hutchins claimed she overheard Damien Echols confess the murders during a satanic meeting. She later admitted his testimony was false and fabricated under police pressure. Michael Carson, a jealous informant, claimed Jason Baldwin confessed to him, but later he recanted, admitting he lied in exchange for leniency in his own legal issues. Most of the witnesses against the Memphis 3 had motives to lie or were pressured by law enforcement. The Memphis 3 entered the Alfred pleas in 2011, allowing them to maintain their innocence while acknowledging the state had enough evidence to convict them. The plea allowed their release but left their convictions intact, sparking debate over the fairness of the legal system. Modern forensic experts reviewed the case and concluded the injuries are thought to be caused by a knife were more likely the result of post animal activity after death. The ritualistic elements of the prosecution's case were speculative and unsupported by evidence. Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's father, DNA links him to the crime scene. Witnesses reported seeing him with the boys shortly before their disappearance. He has a history of violent behavior, but he was never thoroughly investigated. Mr. Bojangles, an unidentified bloody man, entered a Bojangles restaurant near the crime scene. On the night of the murders, law enforcement failed to follow up on this lead and preserve the evidence collected from the crime scene. The HBO documentary exposed flaws in the investigation and trials, leading to widespread support for the Memphis 3. High-profile advocates like Johnny Depp, Eddie Vedder, and Natalie Maines have raised awareness and funds for their defense. Experts have criticized the original case for its reliance on coercion and bias and weak evidence. The case against the Memphis 3 has been widely discredited due to the lack of physical evidence, coerced confession, and an advance in forensic science. Public perception has shifted over the years, with many viewing them as victims of a flawed justice system. However, the convictions remain officially on record, fueling ongoing efforts to fully exonerate them. Several documentaries have been produced about the Memphis 3 case, shedding light on the investigation, trials, and aftermath of convictions. These films have played a significant role in raising awareness about the flaws in the case, garnering public support for Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Misskelley Jr. The Paradise Lost trilogy. Produced by HBO, this groundbreaking series is widely credited for bringing the case to international attention. Paradise Lost, The Children Murdered at Robin Hood Hills, 1996, chronicles the arrests, trials, and convictions of the Memphis 3, highlights the societal hysteria of satanic panic and the lack of evidence in the case. Impact: sparked public outcry over the perceived injustice of the convictions. Examines the appeal Paradise Lost 2 Revolutions. Examines the appeal process in the growing movement to free the Memphis 3. Focus on alternative suspects, particularly Mark Byers, the stepfather of Christopher Byers. Impact: deepened the skepticism about the case and raised questions about the real perpetrators. Paradise Lost Purgatory, 2011, documents new developments including DNA evidence that failed to link the Memphis 3 to the crime scene. Covers the alpha plea that led to the release in 2011. Nominated for an Academy Award for the Best Documentary and further gravitating public support for the exoneration. Rest of Memphis, 2011. Director Amy J. Berg. Producer Peter Jackson and Fran Roche. Overview: exposed the flaws in the original investigation, alternative suspects, and efforts of the Memphis 3 supporters. Features interviews with the forensic experts, advocates, and the defendants. Impact: introduced new evidence pointing to Terry Hobbs and further discredit the prosecution's case. Help reignite the movement to fully exonerate the Memphis 3. The Forgotten Memphis 3, 2020. Director Bob Ruff. A two-part series revisiting the case, focusing on unanswered questions and the need of further investigation. Includes new evidence and analysis of alternative suspects and evidence. Offers a new perspective on the case for a new generation of viewers. The Devonauts, 2013, a dramatized adaptation. Director Atom Argon, based on Mary Leverrett's book Devonauts, The True Story of the Memphis 3. A dramatized retelling of the case, focused on an investigation and trials, stars Reese Witherspoon and Colin Firth. While not a documentary, it provides a dramatization but compelling narrative of the events. True crime shows and podcasts, Unsolved Mysteries. Featured segments on the case help keeping the story in public discourse. Shows like Truth and Justice, hosted by Bob Ruff, has dedicated episodes analyzing the evidence and exploring new theories. These documentaries not only brought worldwide attention to the case, but also inspired activism and advocacy for the Memphis 3. They explored systematic flaws in the justice system, highlighted the dangers of the biases and societal hysteria, continue to serve as a powerful tools for education and. Terry Hobbs, the stepfather of Stevie Branch, filed a defamation lawsuit against Natalie Maines, the lead singer of the Chicks, in 2008. The lawsuit stems from Maines' public statements implying that Hobbs may have been involved in the murders of the three boys in the Memphis 3 case. Back on the lawsuit. Natalie Maines is a vocal advocate for the Memphis 3, used her platform to highlight the flaws in the case. During a 2008 2007 rally in Little Rock, Arkansas. In an insignificant blog post, Natalie stated new DNA evidence, and raised questions about Terry Hobbs' potential involvement. Statements and questions. Natalie referenced the DNA testing that linked a hair found in the literatures used to bind Michael Moore to Terry Hobbs. She pointed to the inconsistency in Hobbs' timeline on the night of the murders and statements from the neighbors suggesting he was seen with the boys shortly before their disappearance. Maines implied that these factors raised serious questions about Hobbs' potential role in the crime. Hobbs claims defamation. Claims argue that Maine's statement falsely accused him of being involved in the murders, damaging his reputation and causing emotional distress. He maintained that the allegations were baseless and that he had no involvement in the crime. Lawsuit details filed in Paxton County Circuit Court in Arkansas in November 2008. Hobbs sought to unsignificant damages, claiming Maine's accusations had caused harm to his personal and professional life. Lawsuit dismissal. In December 2009, a federal judge dismissed the lawsuit, ruling that Hobbs could not prove actual malice or that Maine's knowingly made false statements. The court found that Maine's comments were based on evidence already in the public domain and fell under the category of protected speech. Significance. The dismissal was seen as a victory for the free speech and advocacy efforts surrounding the Memphis 3. It also underscored the importance of public figures bringing attention to the potential injustices, even when controversial. The lawsuit and its dismissal kept attention on Terry Hobbs as a potential alternative suspect in the case. Maines continued to advocate for the Memphis 3, and her outspoken support, along with the others, contributed to the growing movement that led to their release in 2011. Terry Hobbs, the stepfather of Stevie Branch, became a person of interest in the Memphis 3 case after the original investigation. Although he was not considered a suspect during the initial investigation, new evidence and testimonies that emerged after the convictions of Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly cast suspicion on Hobbs. Was a suspected DNA evidence. In 2007, advanced DNA testing revealed a hair found in the literature used to bind Michael Moore was consistent with Terry Hobbs' Michael DNA. While not definitive, this evidence suggests a possible connection to Hobbs. Another hair consistent with Hobbs' friend David Jacoby was found at the crime scene. Inconsistent statements. Hobbs' timeline and an account of his whereabouts on the evenings of May 5, 1993 have been inconsistent. Hobbs claimed he was searching for the boys with his wife and neighbors, but other witnesses contradicted his statements. His account of when he last saw Stevie and the two boys has varied over time. Witness testimonies. Pamela Hicks, Stevie's mother, in interviews and affidavits. Hicks accused Hobbs of being abusive toward Stevie and claimed that Hobbs had a violent temperament. Neighbors. Some neighbors reported seeing Terry Hobbs with the three boys on the day they went missing, contradicting his claim that he didn't see them after they left to play. Violent behavior. Hobbs had a history of violent behavior. In 1994, he is accused of assaulting his then-wife Pamela Hicks. Then there's allegations of previous incidents of domestic violence and aggression. These behaviors have led to some believe that he was capable of committing the murders. Key incidents raising suspicion. The pocket knife. Stevie Branch's favorite pocket knife, which he carried everywhere, was reportedly found in Terry Hobbs' possession years after the murders. This raised questions about how he obtained it. Witness statements of neighbors. Several individuals, including neighbors and family members, claimed to have seen Hobbs with the boys near the wooded area where the bodies were later found. Despite these reports, investigators didn't seriously pursue Hobbs as a suspect during the original investigation. Unexpected leads. Hobbs was not interrogated or thoroughly investigated in 1993. The focus on Memphis 3. The focus The focus on the Memphis 3 as a part of the satanic panic left potential alternate suspects like Hobbs unexamined. Denial of involvement. Hobbs has consistently denied any involvement in the murders, maintained that the DNA evidence is confidential. No formal charges. Despite the allegations and evidence pointing to him, Hobbs has never been charged or named an official suspect of the crime. Defamation lawsuit in 2009. Hobbs filed a defamation lawsuit against Natalie Maines of the Chicks after she publicly suggested he was involved in the murders. The lawsuit was dismissed. Criticism of law enforcement. The initial investigation had been widely criticized for failing to consider alternate suspects like Hobbs. Many believe the police were too focused on Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Kelly. As of December 2024, Hobbs, the stepfather of Stevie Branch, one of the 3 young victims of the 1993 West Memphis murders, has remained a figure of public interest to the ongoing discussions and investigations related to the case. Memoir publication. In 2019, Tay Hobbs released a memoir titled Box Full of Nightmares, offering his potential perspective on events surrounding the murders and their aftermath. In the interviews promoting the book, he stated his belief in the guilt of the original convicted individuals known as the West Memphis 3. It was a discussion. Hobbs has participated in various interviews to discuss his experience and viewpoints on the case. For instance, he was featured on a conversation on the Unforbidden Truth podcast, where he shared insights into his life and the enduring impact of the tragic events. Public records and recent reports do not provide specific details about Terry Hobbs' current residences or personal life. Since the publication of his memoir and participation in interviews, he has maintained a relatively low public profile. The West Memphis 3 case continues to attract public interest, with ongoing debates and investigations into the original convictions and alternative theories about the true perpetrators. Hobbs remains a subject of discussion in various forums and media, reflecting the enduring complicities and controversies associated with the case. In the Memphis 3 case, the individual referred to as Mr. Bojangles emerged as a potential suspect due to a particular incident on the evening of the murders. Incident at the Bojangles restaurant, date and time. On May 5th, 1993, at approximately 8:42, employees at the Bojangles restaurant, located about a mile from the crime scene in the Robin Hood Hills, reported an African-American man entering the establishment. Behavior and appearance. The man appeared disoriented with blood and mud on his clothing. He entered the women's restroom, leaving blood smears on the walls. After spending some time inside, he exited the restaurant before the police arrived. Officer Regina Meeks responded to the call but did not enter the restaurant, reportedly taking the manager's report through the drive-thru window. The following day, after the victim's body was discovered, detectives collected blood samples from the restaurant. However, these samples were later reported lost, and the man was never identified or located. Approximately. The Bojangles restaurant location near the crime scene and the timing of the incident led to speculation about the man's potential involvement in the murders. Physical evidence. A hair identified as belonging to an African-American male was later recovered from a sheet wrapped around one of the victims. Due to the loss of blood samples from the restaurant, it was impossible to determine if there was a match. Criticism of the police handling. The police failed to thoroughly investigate the Bojangles incident, and the loss of critical evidence have been points of contention and suggesting a missed opportunity to explore a viable lead. Some perpetrators of the West Memphis 3, some of the supporters of the West Memphis 3 innocents argue that Mr. Bojangles could have been the actual perpetrator, pointing to the coincidence of his appearance near the crime scene and the discovery of the hair at the site. To date, Mr. Bojangles has never been identified. His potential connection to the murders have remained speculative. The incident underscores the criticism of the initial investigation thoroughness and the possibility that the critical leads were overlooked. The investigation into the Memphis 3 case have been long criticized for failing to pursue potential alternative suspects. Over the years, several individuals have been suggested as possible perpetrators, largely due to new evidence, witnesses' statements, and inconsistencies in the original investigation. Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's stepfather. Stevie Hobbs has been frequently discussed as alternative suspect due to his connection to the victim, and new evidence that surfaced after the original trial. Key allegations: DNA evidence. A hair found in the ligature used to bind one of the boys was consistent with Terry Hobbs' DNA. Another hair consistent with his friend David Jacoby was also found at the crime scene. Several individuals, including the family members, have accused Hobbs of being abusive toward Stevie and others in the family. Timeline of inconsistencies. Hobbs' timeline of events on the day of the murders have been questioned, with conflicting accounts from neighbors and family members. Witness testimony. In a sworn affidavit, neighbors have claimed to have seen Hobbs with 3 boys shortly before their disappearance. Denials. Hobbs has consistently denied involvement, and the DNA evidence is not conclusive enough to definitely place him at the crime scene. John Mark Byers, Christopher Byers' stepfather. Mark Byers initially viewed with suspicion due to his behavior inconsistencies in his statement. Key points: behavior. Byers' public demeanor, particularly in the documentaries about the case, raised suspicion among viewers and investigators. He gave a knife to the filmmakers during the first Paradise Lost documentary that reportedly had blood matching his and Christopher's DNA. Cleared by DNA. Later, the DNA excluded Byers as a match to any evidence found at the crime scene. The Byers eventually became a vocal supporter of the Memphis 3's innocence and pointed suspicion at Terry Hobbs. Other local individuals. Several other individuals have been mentioned in connection to the case, although none of these are officially charged or exclusively investigated. Jacoby, connection to Terry Hobbs. Jacoby was a friend of Terry Hobbs, reportedly spent time with him on the day of the murders. A hair consistent with Jacoby's DNA was found at the crime scene, although Jacoby has denied involvement. John Mark Byers' neighbors. Some neighbors claim to have seen some suspicious individuals near Robin Hood Hills around the time of the murders. These leads were not thoroughly followed up. Several theories suggest the boys may have been killed by a transit or a stranger passing through the area. However, no credible evidence have emerged to support this theory. Unnamed perpetrators. Some believe the real perpetrators were never identified due to the police focus on Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miscali during the height of the Satanic Panic. This narrow focus leads to missed opportunities to investigate other potential suspects. Challenges pursuing alternate suspects. A lack of evidence. Many years have passed since the murders, and much of the physical evidence has been degraded or have been lost. Initial investigation falls. The original investigation focused heavily on the Memphis 3, leaving little room for exploring alternative leads. Legal and procedural barriers. Arkansas authorities have resisted reopening the case or pursuing new suspects, citing the alpha plea and the need for conclusive evidence. While advocacy efforts and advancements in forensic sciences reopened discussions about the alternative suspects. No new charges have been filed. Many believe that the retesting of DNA evidence and revisiting the case could uncover the identity of the true perpetrators. The Memphis 3 case remains one of the most infamous and controversial criminal cases in modern American history. It highlights the profound consequences of a justice system driven by public hysteria, prejudice, and flawed investigative practices. Despite the release in 2011 following alpha plea, Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miscali remain officially convicted of a crime for which no physical evidence have linked them. Over the years, advancements in forensic science, the emergence of alternative suspects, and the exposure of investigatory missteps have cast significant doubt on their guilt. The case has become a symbol of the dangers of rushing to judgment and the impact of societal affairs like the Satanic Panic, and the critical importance of due process and evidence-based investigations. For the families of the victims, Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, the case remains unresolved, with the real perpetrator still unidentified. Efforts to retest the DNA evidence using modern technology hold the potential to provide answers, though legal and procedural challenge persist. The legacy of the Memphis case is a cautionary tale about the fragility of justice and the resilience of those fighting against wrongful convictions. It serves as a reminder of the importance of integrity, fairness, and a critical scrutiny in the pursuit of truth. While the case officially remains closed, the fight for full exoneration and justice for the victims continues, fueled by the enduring hope that the truth will one day come to light. And please, people, do not use the R word for the little people like you. I will block you on here because that's very offensive to them. And I had used the right chumps. So if you do comment, Jesse Miss Kelly, please use the right chum because that show respect. And so, but I do believe that the Memphis 3 are innocent. I'm not going to reveal who. And then there's John Mike Byers. He was not involved. David Jacoby. I don't think he was either. And I'm sure there's some other suspects too. I'm sure it wasn't them. The DNA testing had been pushed back to be starting on February 25th. So hopefully by March or maybe April, hopefully the test results will come out and the true perpetrators will be revealed. And once the results of the DNA tests comes out, I will reveal the killer. And I'll also let you guys know if the guy's arrested. And then I won't do an episode where multiple episodes where I follow the trial. The trial will get done in one episode, but that won't be until the guy is sentenced. So hopefully the perpetrator is going to be revealed soon, and the West Memphis 3 can be fully exonerated, and hopefully then they can sue Arkansas for putting them behind bars for a crime they did not commit. Goodbye, everybody.